Commander Ethan Cole sat in the warm afternoon sun, his daughter's soccer game in full swing, the smell of grass and the sound of laughter in the air, and for a moment the world felt safe. Then the sky changed without warning. 3 burning streaks tore across the clouds at impossible speed, not like shooting stars, but like spears of fire ripping the heavens apart. The crowd froze. The children stopped mid-game as a strange low hum filled the air louder and deeper until it rattled the ground. Under their feet, Ethan's eyes locked on the falling lights as they grew larger, not falling to the earth, but stopping in mid-air above the city. Their shapes no longer fire, but massive metallic shadows with sharp edges and glowing lines of cold, blue light. The stadium lights flickered, then died. The scoreboard went black, and the loudspeakers cut off in an instant. Cell phones failed. People shouted in confusion, and cars in the parking lot stopped as if frozen by invisible hands. Then the hum became a voice, not from speakers, not from the sky, but from inside everyone's head, speaking in perfect English, and yet in a way that felt ancient and heavy. Your world is under new order. Humanity will surrender. Resistance will be punished, the voice said, and the silence that followed was worse than the words. People began to panic. Some ran, others stood in shock, but Ethan was already moving, scanning the sky, as more ships appeared like black blades cutting through the clouds. The military would respond, he thought. But deep inside, he knew these were not enemies. Humanity had ever prepared for a flash of light burst from one of the ships. A beam of green energy that struck the city's tallest building, turning glass and steel into dust that fell like snow screams filled the air. The stadium trembled. A second beam hit the airport runways, melting them into rivers of glowing metal, and then smaller shapes dropped from the main ships like metal insects, each one sprouting spidery legs and strange weapons as they landed drones. Ethan realized, though nothing like the kind humans built, these machines moved with a predator's grace, scanning every face with red eyes and seizing anyone who looked like they might fight back. Soldiers, police, even people holding tools were grabbed in seconds and lifted into the air by beams of light. One of the drones stopped near Ethan, its red eye focusing on him, then shifting away as if reading his mind and finding nothing of interest. Yet Ethan felt a cold certainty. It knew him somehow. His daughter clung to his side, her small voice trembling. "What's happening, Dad?" He had no answer, only the pounding in his chest and the distant thought of his wife, Lena, a scientist working at the city's research lab. The voice spoke again. "Surrender. Your leaders will be taken. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your future will be guided." And as the words echoed, more ships descended across the horizon. Ethan saw jets scrambling from a nearby base, but the alien ships turned, and without firing bullets or missiles, simply released another invisible wave. The jet's engines died mid-flight, the pilots ejecting in tiny bursts of white smoke as their planes fell like stones. The crowd in. The stadium broke into chaos. People pushing, shoving, climbing over seats in blind panic. Ethan pulled his daughter toward the exit, keeping low as drones swept overhead. A sudden roar came from the west, not from the aliens, but from tanks rolling into the streets. Their cannons fired, sending thunder through the air. Shells hit the alien shields and vanished into ripples of blue light as harmless as stones thrown into a pond. The tanks were destroyed seconds later, beams slicing through them as if they were paper. Ethan reached the parking lot and saw black columns rising from the ground in the distance, as if the earth itself was being pulled upward. The alien ships were not just attacking, they were building something, and they were doing it fast. His daughter stumbled. He lifted her into his arms, scanning for a safe path. But there was no such thing anymore. He caught a glimpse of the lab tower where Lena worked, and felt a chill as one of the alien beams targeted it. The building vanished into dust before he could take a step. The voice returned softer now, but heavier, as if pressing into his bones. "Do not run. Do not fight. Your time has ended." And yet as Ethan clutched his daughter and stared at the alien fortress growing, In the heart of the city, something in him refused to break. If this was the end of humanity, he thought, then someone had to be the one to start the last fight. Times Square lay in silence where there should have been the blinding glow of billboards, and the roar of traffic there was only the steady mechanical hum of alien patrol drones drifting through the air like cold, watchful predators, their red eyes sweeping the streets for movement, and their black armor reflecting the pale morning light. The once crowded sidewalks were empty, the storefronts' dark and lifeless doors locked not by human hands, but by invisible fields that shimmered faintly in the air. Commander Ethan Cole moved through the shadows of an alley, keeping his back against the wall. His daughter safe with a trusted neighbor in a hidden basement across town. The aliens had not destroyed the cities, they had taken them, every street, every building, every piece of human life, now part of what they called the New Order humans. Could walk to work if they had work to go to. They could speak if they spoke only in quiet tones and never about resistance. They could live, but they could never be free. And anyone who stepped out of line vanished into the silver transport spheres that rose into the sky and never returned. Ethan had seen it happen to soldiers, teachers, even children. The aliens didn't discriminate, only enforced the rules with a precision that left no room for mistakes in the first days after the sky burned. The world's leaders had been taken, whole governments pulled apart like toys. The United Nations building stood empty, guarded by silent alien sentinels. The human military was gone. What remained were scattered survivors hiding in basements, tunnels, and forgotten corners of cities like rats in their own homes, and among them grew whispers of a group called the Ashes, a network of fighters, scientists, engineers, and everyday people who refused to accept the end. Ethan found them in a ruined subway station lit only by stolen alien lights. Their leader, a woman named Mara, wore a patchwork uniform of human and alien armor, her voice low but firm as she told the group the truth. The aliens are not gods. She said they are afraid. Afraid of something we have or something we can become. Ethan stepped forward, explaining that his wife Lena had been taken from the research lab the same day the attack began. She was working on advanced energy systems technology that could change the balance of power. He didn't know the details, only that it was important enough for the aliens to destroy the entire building. Mara's eyes narrowed. The aliens did not destroy your building to erase it. She said they destroyed it because someone removed something. Before they got there, someone they still have not found. Ethan's pulse quickened. If that was true, then Lena might still be alive. Mara handed him a small black device, a stolen alien scanner. We believe she was taken to a place they call the core. She said it is a fortress deep under the Atlantic Ocean. No human ship can reach it without being destroyed. The only way in is to understand their technology. The meeting was interrupted by the sound of approaching drones. The group scattered through tunnels as beams of red light swept over the station walls. Ethan followed Mara into a maintenance shaft, their breath echoing in the narrow, dark space until they reached a steel door hidden behind a pile of broken concrete. Inside was a cramped room lined with old computer monitors, maps, and alien devices in pieces, as if taken apart by curious hands. "This is our lab," Mara said softly. "We study their weapons, their machines, anything we can use against them." Ethan touched a half-built weapon on the table. It felt wrong in his hands, cold and alive. The aliens call themselves the Order. Mara continued, but long before they came here, they were something else. Conquerors of dozens of worlds. The humans they meet either join them or vanish. There is no middle ground. Ethan thought of the voice in his head the day of the attack, and the way it had felt not just like a threat, but a decision already made. "What are they afraid of?" he asked Mara. Hesitated, then pointed to a small, flickering screen showing a blurry image of a glowing crystal floating in a sealed chamber. "We believe it is their power source," she said. "Without it, their shields, their ships, even their weapons will fail. The only known deposit of this element is here on Earth." In one place, Antarctica. Ethan stared at the screen, the idea forming in his mind, dangerous and desperate. If we take it, we can fight back. Mara nodded, but warned the element was heavily guarded, and the aliens would destroy the planet before letting humans control it. Ethan knew then what had to be done. Find Lena, reach the core, and take the element before the aliens could act first. But even as he thought it, the sound of the alien hum returned faint at first, then growing louder through the walls of the hidden lab. The drones had found them again, and this time they were not searching. They were hunting. The night was heavy with fog as Ethan and Mara moved through the shattered remains of the old NASA research facility. Its broken walls jagged against the pale moonlight. The place smelled of rust and dust and something older, a strange metallic scent that seemed to cling to the air, as if the ground itself remembered the day the aliens came. They had chosen this place because it was abandoned, ignored by the patrols. But Ethan felt an unease crawling under his skin. He could almost hear whispers in the silence. Their flashlights cut thin beams through the dark, revealing torn computer screens, shattered glass, and overturned desks. The deeper they went, the more it felt like walking into a tomb of human ambition until they reached. A steel vault door blasted open from the inside beyond. It lay a room filled with dusty crates and collapsed shelves, but against the far wall stood a single terminal, still glowing faintly, its screen flickering as if resisting death. Mara powered it up, and lines of code scrolled across the display. Ethan leaned closer and saw images flash by photographs of strange engines, diagrams of weapons they had never built, maps of distant star systems, and then a folder marked Project Horizon. Mara opened it, and a video began to play, a grainy recording of scientists speaking quickly. As alarms blared in the background, the words came in pieces, their voices panicked. They're watching us. They've been watching for centuries. We're too close. The feed cut to a view of Earth from orbit, and Ethan saw them, not the ships from the day of the invasion, but smaller, darker vessels moving in the shadows like hunters waiting. The recording ended with one final sentence etched into the file name. They struck first because they feared what we were building. Ethan's chest tightened. The truth was worse than he imagined. The aliens had not come because humanity attacked. They had come because humanity was on the verge of becoming too dangerous. To control, Mara pulled a small device from her pack, plugging it into the terminal. Files streamed across the screen, and she explained that their scouts had discovered fragments of alien communication logs. One spoke of an element called Varion, the same crystal shown in the Ashes lab. It powered everything the invaders used, and without it, they were blind and weak. But the largest known deposit was buried deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, guarded not just by soldiers, but by machines older than the invasion itself. Ethan frowned. Older. How Mara hesitated before answering. We think they crashed here long before humans could even write history, and they've been hiding in plain sight ever since, before they could speak again. The sound of metal striking concrete echoed from somewhere above drones. Mara hissed. She yanked the device from the terminal, and they moved fast, weaving through corridors as the hum of alien engines grew louder. They burst through a side door into the cold night, only to see searchlights sweeping the ground from hovering ships. One beam caught Ethan's shoulder, burning through his jacket as they dove into the cover of collapsed scaffolding. Heart pounding, they crawled through debris until they reached a drainage tunnel. The air inside was damp and cold, water trickling around their boots, but it offered safety. For now, Mara handed Ethan the stolen files, her voice low. If we can get these to our tech team, they can build a map to the core, and maybe even find a way to shield us from their sensors. Ethan nodded, but his mind was already racing to Lena. She would know exactly what to do with this information. If she was alive, the tunnel stretched for miles until it opened into a forgotten maintenance station dimly lit by flickering bulbs. Here the ashes had set up another safe point. Old train cars filled with supplies and cots. Engineers working on alien weapons with steady hands. Ethan spread the files across a table and one of the engineers. A young man named Rafe began decoding them, his eyes widening as symbols turned into coordinates. The core's exact location appeared on the screen, but so did something else. A warning signal repeating over and over in alien script Mara translated. Softly, they know someone accessed this data. Their coming Ethan's jaw tightened. There was no more time for slow plans. They would have to move now before the aliens erased everything they had just learned and before they closed the last window, to reach his wife. Snow whipped across the endless white as Ethan's small transport crawled over the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. The wind howled against the hull like a living thing trying to tear it apart inside the cabin. Every breath came. Out in clouds of frost, Mara sat beside him wrapped in layers of heavy gear, her eyes fixed on the flickering tracker screen that showed a pulsing blue dot deep beneath the ice behind them. Rafe monitored the scanners for any sign of alien patrols. The world here felt untouched by life, but Ethan knew it was far from empty. Somewhere beneath their feet lay the reason the aliens had come to Earth long before the invasion, and the key to ending their hold on humanity. The journey had already cost them one of their escort skiffs ripped from the sky by a sudden storm that seemed too precise to be natural. Ethan suspected the aliens could control the weather in places like this to keep people away after hours of fighting the wind. The tracker began to beep faster, and Mara ordered the transport to stop. They stepped into the blinding cold, the air biting their skin through the suits, and began moving on foot, each step sinking into snow that sometimes hid jagged cracks in the ice. After what felt like hours, they reached a cliff where the ground fell away into a massive crater, half buried in snow, and there it was, a dark metallic shape protruding from the ice, like the bones of some ancient beast. The crashed alien ship was larger than any human vessel, and unlike the sleek warships in the sky, this one was scarred, twisted, its hull marked with strange symbols half worn away by centuries. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wreck had been here long before humans could dream of space travel. Mara moved quickly, setting charges along the ice not to destroy, but to break the frozen seal around the ship. With each detonation, the air filled with sharp echoes, until finally a passage opened into the hull. They descended into darkness, their lights revealing a corridor lined with alien glyphs and the skeletal remains of creatures not entirely like the invaders they fought. Now smaller, fragile, as if built for a different world, their brittle bones told a silent story of something that had gone very wrong in this place. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to hum with an energy that made the hair on Ethan's arms rise. At last they reached what had once been the ship's control chamber. At its center, a sphere of dull silver metal pulsed faintly with blue light, and then a voice unlike the one from the invasion filled the room. It was cold but not hostile. "You are not them," the voice said. "You are from the world above." Ethan exchanged a glance with Mara and stepped forward, explaining they were here to stop the invaders. The voice paused as if thinking, then replied, "I was their enemy before you were born. They destroyed my fleet and buried me here. I have waited for the day they would fall." Mara asked if it could help them, and the AI explained that it still controlled part of the ship's systems, including scans of the planet, and more importantly, knowledge of the element Varion. It confirmed that without it, the invaders' shields would fail, but warned that extracting it would draw their entire fleet. Ethan agreed to the risk. The AI projected a map of the deposit beneath the ice and provided schematics for a weapon humans could build if they had both the element and the right energy core. As they prepared to leave, alarms echoed through the ship. The AI's voice turning sharp. "They have found you outside." The wind had died, replaced by the ominous hum of alien skiffs descending through the clouds, beams of red light cutting across the snow. Mara shouted for them to run, and they sprinted toward the transport. Rafe, carrying the data core and his pack lasers, tore into the ice around them, sending shards into the air. One beam sliced the ground ahead, opening a chasm. They barely leapt across. Ethan turned back long enough to see one of the skiffs fire into the wreckage of the ancient ship. The AI's final words echoing in his mind. "I will delay them, but they will come for you with everything they have." They reached the transport and tore across the ice, chased by the red glow of the alien craft. Ethan clutched the core, knowing they had what they needed to strike back, but also knowing the enemy now understood exactly what humanity planned to do. The ocean above was a black, crushing weight as Ethan's stolen submersible crept through the deep, his hands tight on the controls, while the faint green glow of alien sensors flickered in the distance. The core lay somewhere ahead, a vast fortress, hidden beneath the Atlantic, its location revealed only by the stolen maps and the AI's coordinates beside him. Mara kept her rifle ready, though they both knew bullets would do little against alien armor. Rafe sat at the rear, monitoring the sonar, his voice low every few seconds. "We're close, too close." The water outside seemed to shimmer unnaturally, the alien's cloaking field distorting the view until the sub broke through and the core came into sight. It was enormous, a black spire rising. From the ocean floor into the darkness above, surrounded by a swarm of drones like metal sharks guarding their nest beams of pale light, swept the seafloor scanning for intruders. Ethan shut down the engines, letting the sub drift until it settled. Behind a ridge of rock, then they suited up in pressure armor and slipped into the freezing water. Every movement slow and careful until they reached a maintenance hatch, half hidden in the fortress wall. Rafe hacked the alien panel a pulse of red. Light passed over them, but no alarm sounded. The hatch opened with a hiss, and they slipped inside. The interior was worse than Ethan imagined, a maze of gleaming corridors lit by a cold blue glow, the air heavy with the faint hum of alien machines. They kept to the shadows, moving past doors that revealed cages of humans, some unconscious, others staring blankly, their eyes dulled by whatever the aliens had done to them. Ethan's chest tightened when he saw her in the third chamber, Lena strapped to a chair, tubes feeding into her arms, a faint light pulsing through them. He was at her side in seconds, tearing at the restraints. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion shifting into recognition. "Ethan," she whispered, voice dry and weak. He told her they had to move, but she shook her head. "No, you don't understand. They're going to erase half the human population." Her words hit like ice. She explained in quick, broken phrases that the aliens saw human growth as a threat. They had calculated that if humanity reached a certain number, they could not be contained, so they would act. First, the process would begin soon, starting with every major city on Earth. Before Ethan could reply, the floor trembled, and the low boom of alien steps echoed down. The corridor. The Primarch entered, towering over the guards, his armor blacker than the void, and his voice deeper than the ocean itself. "You think you are the first to fight us?" He said. "You are dangerous because you adapt, you spread, you consume worlds, as we do. You will not be allowed to rise." Ethan stood between him and Lena, his voice steady. "You struck first because you were afraid?" The Primarch tilted his head. "Not fear." He said. "Inevitability." The guards moved forward, but Mara and Rafe opened, fire-buying seconds of chaos. Ethan dragged Lena into a service tunnel, alarms blaring overhead. The Primarch's voice followed them through the metal walls. "You cannot win, human. You will burn with your cities." They ran through twisting corridors, guided by Lena, who knew the layout from her captivity, until they reached the power chamber at the heart of the fortress. Massive conduits of glowing varian. Running like veins through the walls, Lena's voice was urgent. "If we destroy the shield, Generator here, the fortress will be exposed to attack from the outside. Ethan planted the charges from his pack, setting the timer for 10 minutes, but before they could leave, drones flooded the room, beams of red light cutting through the air. Mara shouted for Ethan to take Lena and go holding the line, as Rafe stayed with her. Ethan hesitated for a heartbeat before Lena pulled him away. They sprinted down the final corridor to an escape hatch, sealing it behind them. The submersible shook violently. As they launched into the open water, the fortress behind them lighting up with search beams, a muffled thump rolled through the sea as the charges detonated, a column of white light shooting toward the surface, the shields collapsing like glass. The rebel fleet waiting above moved in, unleashing a barrage of firepower. Ethan gripped the controls, pushing the sub to its limit, but in his mind, he knew the battle was only beginning, because the weapon they had built with the alien core would need to be fired from inside enemy lines, and there was only one way to make that happen. He would have to be the one to deliver it himself. The sky above Earth was no longer blue. It was a battlefield burning red with the light of war. The rebel fleet, a patchwork armada of stolen alien ships and refitted human vessels, rose from the surface like a tide of defiance. The alien armada waited above in perfect formation, their black hulls blotting out the stars. The core lay crippled beneath the Atlantic, its shields shattered from the explosions Ethan had planted, but the enemy was far from defeated, their flagship. The Dominion still commanded the battle from orbit, its massive shape bristling with weapons capable of erasing entire cities in seconds. And deep inside that ship lay the control nexus, the one place from which the alien fleet's shields and weapons could be shut down. Ethan stood on the deck of the rebel cruiser, resolute, the weapon they called the spear, strapped into a launch. Cradle before him, the alien element, Varian pulsing faint blue light through its casing. Mara stood at his side, armor scorched from the fight in the core. Her voice steady over the chaos of comms, the only way to fire this into the flagships. Hard is to get close inside close. Ethan nodded because that meant a suicide run. He'd known it from the moment they built the weapon, and he was ready for it. Lena was on another ship directing the fleet, her voice cutting through the comm for, "A moment, Ethan, be careful." She said not as an order, but as a plea. He answered the only way he could. "I'll make it count." The attack began with the rebels diving straight into the alien formation, human pilots weaving between ships far larger than anything they had ever faced. Beams of energy lanced through the darkness, turning fighters into silent fireballs. But the fleet pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their one chance. Ethan's ship broke through the outer ring of enemy, defenses skimming so close to alien cruisers that their hulls scraped like grinding steel. He could feel the spear's power building in the cradle, a hum that seemed to sink into his bones. Alarms wailed as the Dominion locked weapons onto them. But Mara fired the thrusters at maximum, slamming the ship into a narrow gap along the flagship's hull and plunging into an access port meant for docking craft. The interior of the alien ship was a cathedral of war, vast and dark, lit by rivers of glowing energy that flowed toward the reactor core. Drones swarmed in from every direction. Ethan and Mara fought through them, their stolen alien rifles spitting blue bolts that tore machines apart, but more kept coming. Ethan moved like a man who knew every second mattered, pushing forward until the reactor chamber loomed before them, a cavern of light and heat, where the Varian heart pulsed inside a sphere of spinning metal rings. Mara held the entrance, firing at anything that moved. As Ethan hauled the spear into place, the weapon locked into the targeting frame, its core screaming with energy as if it knew this was the moment. Through the comm, the Primarch's voice rolled over them like thunder. "You cannot kill us, human, you will only burn yourself." But Ethan only smiled grimly. "Not kill you," he said. "End you with a final press of the trigger." The spear fired a beam of pure energy, punching through the Varian heart. The sphere shattered in a blinding flash, the shockwave, ripping through the flagship's systems lights, dying weapons going silent across the entire alien fleet. Outside, the rebels saw the shields collapse, ships that had once been invincible, now vulnerable to human fire. The fleet tore into them explosions, blooming across the sky. The Dominion shook violently, alarms echoing as Ethan and Mara ran for the docking port behind them. The reactor erupted, sending walls of fire down the corridors. They dove into the cruiser's hatch as the flagship began. To break apart the view through the bridge window was a vision of victory. Alien ships falling from the sky, burning trails marking their defeat. Cheers erupted over the comms. But Ethan stood silent, watching the wreckage drift in the dark. Lena's voice came through soft and trembling. "You did it," he answered. "They made the first move, but we made the last." Yet as the debris cleared, the comm crackled again. Not with human voices, but with the cold, familiar tone of the Antarctic AI, "The war is not over." It said they were only the first wave. Ethan exchanged a grim glance with Mara, knowing that humanity had won a battle, but awakened something far larger and far darker, waiting somewhere beyond the stars.